Welcome back to World Crisis Radio here in our second hour. Let me remind everybody to take a look at Tarpley.net. On Tarpley.net, you will find the interesting cover of that new edition of Obama, the Postmodern Coup. That's called Obama Dietro la Maschera, the Italian edition with Obama and the Wall Street sign behind his head. Very, very interesting. And so that gives you a link that leads to Fuoco Edizioni, where you can place your order, I believe, somehow. And you've also got a couple of German DVDs from Kopfverlag that are up there, as well as the one you need to read this week is, of course, the Surviving the Cataclysm, your guide through the worst financial crisis in human history, the second edition. And I get people writing me, do I agree with this? Do I agree with Ron Paul? Short answer is on economics, I do not. But if you want to know what I think and the method necessary to have a program to get out of a world economic depression, then you've got to read that Surviving the Cataclysm, because that's what that was written for, and contains a detailed economic program that you can use to construe the brief and very concise 5-point program. And I'm happy to say that at that demonstration in Wall Street in the past week or 10 days, we had people handing out leafletized versions of that 5-point program, and that's exactly what it's for. That program is made to show up on one piece of paper. It's 2 sides of one leaflet. So if you have some of these anti-austerity rallies going on, remember, the anti-austerity struggle without a program is doomed. You've got to know what to do. You can't just say, no, don't cut me, bro. It's got to be, we know how to take over the government. We know how to fix the economy. We know the main policies that have got to be implemented. And basically, by judging people compared to that program, you can see who's a faker and who's not. So, concerning, I guess we're still on Pakistan. Yes, indeed. We've got to look at this, the flurry of attention to the possibility of a coup by nationalist colonels. Now, you'll remember, on this program, we have been talking for some time, since the Egyptian coup back in February, we've been saying that for most of these countries, the emergence of nationalist colonels, that is to say, middle-grade military officers with nationalistic and dirigistic, protectionist, mercantilist instincts and policies, is probably the best thing that you can get. This is reality. Most of these places, you have a small middle class, which is what Al Jazeera shows you on television, the Twitter, Facebook, Internet people, but the Egyptian fellaheen out in the agricultural areas were not involved. And therefore, it's going to take an economic program. And again, you can seize power, but you can't hold it and use it wisely unless you know what to do economically. So that's got to be studied. But what we're talking about is new Nassers, right? Colonel Nasser of Egypt, even Al Jazeera has had various things about the struggle for the Nile, the question of the Suez Canal, and the Aswan High Dam. The most significant opponent of imperialism in the Middle East in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s was Colonel Nasser of Egypt. There is no argument about this. Not perfect, many mistakes, ultimately doomed himself. Let me also say, I would embrace the Bourguiba correction to Nasser. In other words, don't indulge in extremist rhetoric to the point where you become the prisoner of your own rhetoric. If anything, the tragic flaw of Nasser was this. And don't concentrate your army in a forward position where it can be easily counterattacked, because that's what happened in 1967. So Nasser, as corrected by Bourguiba of Tunisia, it seems to me, is about the right approach. Now, that would mean in Egypt today, aren't there military leaders, colonels, medium-grade officers who are horrified by the servility of Tantawi and Annan to the U.S. and the British and the Europeans? I think there must be. And similarly, in Pakistan, are there not colonels who are horrified by the inability of the Pakistani government to assert national sovereignty against these foreign abuses. And we got to remember, you can listen to the weekly discussion on NPR there on Friday morning with Diane Rehm. They don't seem to remember the U.S. was not invited to Pakistan. This was at gunpoint. This was Colin Powell and Richard Armitage saying, if you don't do what we want, we will bomb you back into the Stone Age. We demand the use of your bases. We demand overflights. We demand a supply line to Afghanistan going through your country. This was never invited. Musharraf at that time was told at gunpoint, guess what? We're taking over large parts of your country. It's exactly what they did to Milosevic 2 years before, although Milosevic, for his own reasons, decided to resist, and that also had a tragic outcome. So, a coup by colonels, extremely interesting possibility. If you're in Tunisia, take a look at that. If you're in other parts of the Arab and Islamic world, if you're being victimized by this Arab Spring, remember, if there's a crisis, you can also judo the crisis. You can get the result that you want rather than the result that the CIA wants. And you can see this idea of nationalist colonels. This really scares them. Take a look. And listen now to the National Review. Again, it's between reactionaries and neocons, I guess. A colonel's coup against Kayani. What would it mean? There are measures now being taken. Suppose you got into an open relation of hostility with Pakistan, writes the National Review. Should anti-American elements in the army displace Kayani, they would presumably hold the U.S. supply lines to Afghanistan hostage to a cessation of drone attacks. The step beyond that would be to cut off the Afghanistan supply lines altogether. The U.S. minimum response, says the National Review, would be to suspend aid and provide India with technology that would give India a major advantage over Pakistan. Pakistan would run eagerly into the arms of China at that point. Well, maybe that's already happening. So what would we do then, says the National Review? Could we find new supply lines, and at what price? Should we keep attacking refuges, terrorist bases, so-called, in Pakistan? Would that then lead to war? And then finally, would Pakistan actively join the Taliban to fight us in Afghanistan? In short, would the outcome of a break between America and Pakistan be war, whether low-level or outright? There is no good or easy answer here. I'll tell you the easy answer. Stop meddling, stop interfering, get the U.S. forces out of Afghanistan, and stop this insane plan to smash Pakistan into 4 parts. Remember, it's Sindh, Baluchistan, Pashtunistan, and Punjab, as well as the Waziristan areas, right? 4+ pieces. But of course, says the National Review, what are you going to do about Pakistan's nuclear capability? Therefore, you can't just walk away. So they want to keep meddling. So that's the big scare, the coup by the colonels, and that's an extremely important moment to seize hold of, because if you want to see what the imperialists really don't want, it's this. They want chaotic governments. Oh, yes, they want singing tomorrows with the Twitter dupes and the Facebook dupes and the internet zombies and the autistic nihilists in the public square. That they want, because that's chaos, and then you can write your own ticket, right? Because these people don't know what they want. They have no program, no leader, no organization, no nothing. So they're human dust, as it was said back in the 1930s. So at that point, you better get organized. And one way that it can be done is through these nationalist colonels. Now, let's take a look at the rest of the strategic picture concerning Pakistan and China. We have to remember we're still operating under that Chinese ultimatum delivered to the U.S. a month ago, that the China would consider any attack on Pakistan as an attack on China. And what does that mean? Is that now being acted out in the cyber warfare domain? We'll be back in a minute.